Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Quarantine was rough on all of us. As I'm sure you know, being stuck inside alone for an extended period of time was rough. But a lot of people also experienced some self-discovery during this period.
インターンに行くのが楽しみになってきたわ。どうなんだろうね。1年はまだ様子見って言ってたけど。とりあえず、相沢先生のゴーサイン待ちですわね。だろうね。1年はまだ様子見って言ってたけど。とりあえず、相沢先生のゴーサイン待ちですわね。
Am I gay?
Many of us had to face harsh truths about being LGBTQ while in quarantine. A recent Gallup survey found that 5.6% of adults in the US identify as LGBT, up more than 1% from 2017. This number is even higher for Gen Z, rising 4.5% from 2017. It became clear that gender roles, socialization, and heteronormativity were preventing many of us from being earnestly ourselves. By quarantine isolating people from general society and encouraging people to value internet communities more, many people, particularly young people, came to the realization that their sexual orientation or gender were not what they had originally assumed. So, let's learn how and why some of this happened during this period, and maybe along the way, have a little fun.
Well, in our normal lives, we experience a lot of expectations from our cultures. Women are expected to perform femininity in very specific ways and have a traditional relationship with a man, and men are expected to perform masculinity in very specific ways and have a traditional relationship with a woman. We are taught from birth to behave in ways that are considered correct by our society. Through social learning, individuals will experience heterosexism and cisgenderism, subtly or not so subtly, encouraging them to identify as straight and cisgender. People's idea of the self can be greatly influenced by other people and culture. Though with people not engaging in society and others as they used to, a person's perception of how other people view them can become faint or perhaps irrelevant. The looking glass self is the idea that the self develops through our perceptions of others' opinions and views on us, and this becomes much less important when people are not viewing and evaluating us. This may present a freedom from identity that allows people to identify with a sexuality or gender that is not the ideal for their culture. Without impression management having any effect, people are not under pressure to present in ways that are not genuine or desirable for them. Why pretend to be straight when you aren't?
Agents of socialization like school and peers were not nearly as big of influences during quarantine as they were before. People spent more time on social media such as TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat rather than interacting with others face to face. According to statistics from Statista, Americans spent 10 extra minutes on average on their phones during quarantine, with many social media sites booming in popularity. TikTok saw the greatest growth, primarily with teens and young adults as their user base, and has a wealth of queer communities on the site. Without face-to-face and genuine interaction, people became more confident in coming out, and the time to themselves also gave them time to discover more about themselves. Was it good? Was it fine?
Oh, hello! Being LGBTQ is deviant, and one reason many people may not realize or even deny their identity is due to how one may be perceived as deviant and the stigma and discrimination that LGBTQ people often experience. The people who hide these aspects of their identities and behave as though they are straight and or cis are ritualists. Often, these individuals will hold on to this crafted persona until they reach a breaking point and cannot hide their gender or sexuality anymore. But some people will never accept or publicize their actual identity. Currently, these people who had the benefit of hiding or denying their status as an LGBTQ person pass as cis or straight. But those who do not pass usually end up perceived as outsiders and will become more comfortable in their identity as they find a community of similarly deviant outsiders. This deviance avowal can lead to the sort of in-group orientation that many people in the LGBTQ community have, favoring LGBTQ companionship and relationships. Along with that, many people who are LGBTQ feel a sense of anomie when it comes to their identity. It comes from feeling abnormal from the people around them. This feeling might be worse for them in groups of people in person, because they may be surrounded by people who are not like them, or even homophobic or transphobic. Something that typically helps the feeling of anomie is finding online groups and communities, because it is easy to find other LGBTQ people online who can support them and help them feel accepted and normal. Many LGBTQ people also find it easier to come out through social media instead of in person because it gives a sort of distance.
Okay, we conducted a small survey on what effects the pandemic may have had on a person's understanding of their own gender identity and sexuality. Of the 17 people who participated, 12 said that they identified with the same sexuality before and after quarantine, and 13 said that they identified with the same gender before and after. Though the majority of our survey group stated that their perception of their identity was not impacted by quarantine, a few people claimed that they were affected by this period. More people said that quarantine helped them accept aspects of themselves or said something suggesting that it helped them become more comfortable with an identity they already claimed. It is important to recognize that this survey was done by posting the link to social media and recruiting a couple people we already knew to take it. It is not a perfect display of the larger population, but is a decent sampling of the target population. We were interested in people potentially reevaluating their gender and sexuality, and the circles we are involved in are decently queer. This survey had only a few questions about how people identified and if it was affected by quarantine. But some of the responses we got were not particularly helpful. There was the issue that surveys are somewhat obtrusive and we did not have anything to incentivize participation, which did not result in many participants.
Feminist theorists may say that without the societal pressures, gender inequalities are less prevalent, and this may encourage young people to be more honest about their gender identity. Trans identities are less likely to be stigmatized when we hardly interact with anyone at all, and this slight increase in the population of trans people can help to normalize this identity. They would also claim that gender roles lost some of their power over this time, which is good, and that can be a cause of the slight rise in young queer people coming out.
A symbolic interactionist might say that these small communities allow for individuals to be openly LGBTQ, which then provides the representation that other queer and trans youth can benefit from. The normalization of these identities would queer the binary and limit the discrimination that queer and trans people face. Through these communities, LGBTQ people are becoming more of a subculture and less of a counterculture. As of last year, at least 70% of Americans are in support of same-sex marriage, which is still not that much, but is much higher than it has been historically. In 1988, it was only 11% of people that said that they support gay marriage, and that number rose to 49% in 2009.
Conflict theorists would understand the need for queer youths to find community online and the deviant status of LGBTQ people as exploitation. They would argue that the inequality in the treatment of LGBTQ people is a derivative of class inequality and seeks to place queer and trans individuals lower in the hierarchy of our society. Some straight and cis people want to maintain their dominant status by withholding rights and equal treatment. But while not all straight and cis people are in support of that, they do all benefit from that invisible privilege.
There is no shortage of first-hand accounts of quarantine affecting one's discovery of their gender or sexual identity. It's likely that many of the young people who had the opportunity to come out during quarantine would have done so eventually. But it is hard to deny that for at least some of the young people, this period was a chance to figure out or accept some aspects of themselves that they hadn't before. That's it.